What is up, everybody? I hope you're all doing well today, and welcome back to Last Epoch. Server issues aside, it's been a fun 24 hours, roughly, of me being able to play the 1.0 release, and I just wanted to do a little day later update, how far I've gotten, what build I'm playing, what my plans for this build are, how things have been going in the 1.0 release of the game, and just generally talk about how it's been so far. So diving into the actual progress through, story, getting all my passives, idols, all that kind of fun stuff, and where I am map-wise in the game, I have completed a majority of the story. I'm right before the Logan boss. I have 13 of my 15 passives and 7 out of my 8 idol slots. I decided, because I was at a point where I was doing decent damage, I wanted to get in and start doing some of the monoliths, which is a later game activity, get some XP, try to get better gear, and then I'll go back and plow through the rest of the story and finish out my passives and idol slots. So that went pretty well. I'm now at the doing currently the level 66 monolith. I am level 59, getting real close to 60, so that is moving and cruising along pretty well. My drops have not been particularly good in the 1.0 version until I started doing monoliths. I think the only unique I had found was the swaddling of the erased gloves and that unique like spoon thing that gives you a bunch of dot damage and debuff effect chances, but past that isn't particularly strong for anything I'm doing. And that is how drops have been going. I am in better shape now that I've spent a little time in the monoliths. As you can see, I have decent resistances. I still need to work on necrotic and void a bit, but for the most part, I'm covered and doing fine there. I'm not deathless, but I haven't died a whole lot since early on when I made a few critical mistakes. But in the later portions, when I started getting probably around level 40 to, well, currently to 59, it's been cruising a lot smoother. So now on to what my build is. As I'm sure you've already visually seen, I'm playing Primalist. It's the only class I hadn't even tried a little bit of, and I decided going into 1.0 I wanted to play Primalist and I wanted to slam things. So I am using Upheaval. Actually, we'll just go left to right here. So I'm using Upheaval as my primary skill. I have everything I possibly can set to ice, as I'm trying to do an ice slam build. I have it set to a little extra area and the 3-pronged attack for more range. We'll go in and look at the passives I'm using for it. So I came down here, got some area, started building into the pen. I might rework some of these little nodes here and there, just kind of tweak them around and see what works better when I'm a little further in and can level the skill up quicker. So I may end up dropping some of this. But anyway, and most importantly, I come up here, fill out as much of this node as I can for increased damage, which I will be filling to 5. And then I take the 3 fault lines to get the extra AoE on the skill, though it costs quite a bit more. I take all 3 points in the mana cost reduction and armor shred chance. Then I came up here, took the required 2 for the dot damages. Then I switch it to cold, and then I have 2 points so far in the just base damage, and then increase to damage to frozen enemies. And then I'm working my way up here to get the shatter on kill. I haven't gotten it yet, but I would like to see how this works. This could be very fun, getting just big ice pops on any little enemy you kill and whatnot. Could increase AoE damage a lot too, so we'll see how that one works out. I'm excited to give this node a try as soon as I hit level 18. And then I'm using Fury Leap because great movement skill. That's about it. Cooldown recovery and damage maxed. Down here I am rolling with the chance to reset, so on kills I have a chance to reset the cooldown and be able to jump away from things a lot quicker. Makes it faster when you're running through the monoliths, just blasting a mob, having the cooldown pop, then being able to jump away to the next one. Feels pretty good, I'm enjoying it a lot. Then I took some extra damage, and then I've just recently started working down here on the global damage buff and then the frenzy buff after Fury Leaping. It's pretty solid so far. I definitely think I'm going to make sure I fill the rest of this damage buff for it out. I'll probably skip the healing over here as I'm not having issues with health yet. And then I will probably, once I can sustain the mana for it, come up here and take the Violent Upheaval node. When you use Fury Leap, you land and it will use Upheaval. I'll have to see if it's that effective, because rather than using the like star-shaped where Upheaval hits all around you, I am using the like three-pronged cone version of the attack. So if I land and this works how I think it does, wherever I land, I'll just shoot an Upheaval out directly from that. So it may not be super effective. I'm definitely going to give it a try though and see how I like it, again, once I can sustain the mana. And then I'm using Warcry because it's fantastic and I love freezing things in their tracks and stopping them from using abilities. It's very nice defensively and offensively. It's quite fantastic. But anyway, I have the area increased. I have the invulnerability so that I can go into Berserk and Berserk Duration, Berserk Stacks, which I will probably finish these out. And then attack speed per stack of Berserk. This one I feel like would be better on a like much faster attacking skill. I do have the Berserk fall off a lot just because I do have a slower rate of attack. It's definitely more of a setup and one-shot things and not as much of a constant spam of skills. We'll see if that improves over time, but for now it's still good. I still like having the Berserk, and fighting bosses I'm able to keep it up almost indefinitely, I believe. I forget if it has a fall off after a while, but either way, this part of it has been effective. Then I come over here, I make it freeze instead of stun. I take the 250% total cold damage for 4 seconds after shouting at things, which is incredibly good. Then I take the increased crit. Not sure how heavily I'm going to work on crit in this build. I've kind of got to get better gear and feel it out and see if it's worth building into. I have a little bit of crit gear right now, but I'm definitely not doubling down in it or anything. And then down here, I take the increased damage while frozen. Just freeze things a lot. Why not get 15% increased damage? And that is it for the Warcry so far. And then as my big damage dealing skill, I'm using Earthquake. Now this tooltip at 9,646 damage per second is very, very misleading for a couple reasons. Actually, one particular reason. So if you'll notice the theme with everything else, I'm always freezing things. Now I came over here and took this node, which gives me 150% more, which would be, I believe, a little like times and a halving my damage. So you have the 100%, which is what you do, 100 more, so it's doubled, and then another 50% on top of that because more is a multiplicative scaling. So this is a ton of damage combined with some of the other stuff in here. What is the area? Yeah, and then more damage over here, another 60% damage. Those, I believe, do show, this one here, and I guess that's the only damage one here. So this one does play into the DPS totals, but this 150 does not show up here. So when I land a normal hit after freezing something, it's hitting base damage for around 20 to 25,000, and when I crit, it's hitting closer to 30. I think maybe on low defense enemies I've seen it hit closer to 40,000. So it's a very, very hard-hitting skill. This has definitely been my elite and boss killer so far. I run up, I shout at things, I freeze them, and then I slam them for massive chunks of their health bar at once. It's really smooth and really fun so far. I hope to keep improving upon it. And then my last slot is kind of a float skill right now. I basically just slotted a minion because in my passives, which we'll go over briefly after this, there's a node that doubles the damage effects of the passive if you have a minion out currently. So it's basically just a little stat boost, though he does have some utility using the wolf, as you can see. I have the increased health, regen, and armor just to make him not fall over as easily. I have him attacking faster and all that, and then I have him using the howl skill. Gain haste, howl buff duration, howl chance on kill, and howl chance on me killing, along with extra buffs and whatnot. And basically what this does is it just gives me a lot of extra effects along with the minion whenever he uses it, or when it procs auto from one of these two nodes, or when I manually push W and make it do the thing and yell. Mostly just buffing. It's not insane, but it's definitely helpful. I may swap this out for something else down the road depending on what I unlock, and if I can maybe get a unique that adds an effect to something. We'll just have to see. This is definitely my like free floating slot. It's not a main part of my build, intentionally at least, so we'll have to see how it goes from there. And we will briefly look at my gear before going into the passives. I don't really have anything nutty. I got one pretty good two-handed mace that has 25 base cold damage, which is nice, and then the 155, yeah, it's the tier 6. The tier 6 melee damage increase, which is pretty hefty. It is a decent damage boost, and this really made a difference once I got it. I was using very garbage melee weapons before I got this one. Like I said, I haven't been having a lot of luck with drops, and I could try and re-roll the extra 2 stats because the stun chance doesn't mean much to me and the chance to poison is useless. I just have not been bold enough to try to take away the affixes yet because I really don't want to lose either of those 2 melee or cold damage stats. But either way, this one has been a good placeholder. Helmet's nothing special, some armor, resists. Amulet is a bunch of resists, and then some mana regen, because I really need mana, and a little crit chance just because it came with it. And then the chest, I have I believe it's one of the new chest types that has the cold resist and the increased cold damage. I could be wrong, it might not be new, but it's pretty solid. I got the +1 to upheaval, which is nice, along with some attunement and resists. One of the new belts, just basic resists, a little minion damage, kinda wasted. I don't really need the minion damage, but the cold damage and endurance threshold is nice, along with a little crit avoidance. And then I've got 2 rings that are very similar, crit chance along with stacked elemental and cold damage increases. Some stun avoidance on this one with a free slot I haven't committed to putting something else in. And then my other one, another crit chance ring, because I got some good substats, and then we got the large elemental and cold damage increases there, which are pretty solid, along with a little lightning resist and health. Gloves are the armor and endurance base with some freeze rate and cold resist, strength, regen, and then a decent stack of fizz resistance. My boots are garbage, 7 increased speed, 6 strength, 8 cold, and 7 fizz resist. These are bad, as you can see they're level 23. I've had these for a very long time. And then my relic, which is also not great. Some LE resist, endurance, crit strike multiplier, and attunement. These 2 slots here, boots and relic, are definitely my highest need to replace things right now. And then in my idle slots, it is mostly just the different resistances. The only exception is I do have these 2 slot verticals that are a little extra cold damage. And then one is a freeze rate multiplier. A lot of wasted stats in the idols, just haven't gotten a whole lot of them yet. But they are mostly filling in for my resists, so that, as you can see, I've got all my main resistances capped. I just need to work on the last 2. And then let us quickly, or hopefully quickly, go through my passives. So in the base primalist tree, I have a little bit in the attunement because I needed to burn slots and get some free resistances. I have the full stack strength and health regen, the melee and melee leech nodes, along with the part for minions, and then a few points in the increased fizz, cold, and lightning, doubled if you have a minion. I will probably end up dumping some more points into like this one and maybe the attunement and resists. I just wanted to get to the 20 and then move into the actual subclass trees, which will move to my main one, which I chose Shaman. We have a full stack of attunement with the pen as well, and then the increased damage, minion damage, partially just for the raw damage and for the increased cooldown recovery for the Fury Leap, which is very nice. Then I came up here, took the cold damage and increased fizz and dodge rating, which seems a little out of place. I feel like that should be armor on this character, but who knows, maybe some people run dodge on this guy. And then we come down here and take the chill, freeze rate, and cold resist, which this is fantastic. I love being able to get a lot of cold resist in one spot like this, along with other stats that also help me. Definitely takes some pressure off gear. Then the flat 10 cold damage for 5 points in Shattered Heavens. And then I get up to 5 points in the Glacial Strike for 5 strength to get the 5-point bonus, which is every 3 seconds your next melee attack deals additional melee cold damage in the form of 40 flat damage. And then down here I take the increased elemental melee damage. No brainer to take this one. You put the 5 points in, 50% increased, solid points. Will not be taking the next one as I'm not using lightning, but this is a very solid node. And then in this tree, the last one I have is 5 points in the attunement to get the increased mana regen per 3 attunement. Might stack more into these as I get, other nodes filled out, kind of like in the main Primalist tree. There's definitely more I could dump in skill point wise. I just want to commit to more important nodes that have immediate effects first rather than slow stacking stats and whatnot. And then the last 7, I have actually deviated and been putting some points into the Druid tree. The main reason is there's a couple notes here and we'll go over them with my plan. So this first one, which is the stacks of endurance percent and armor, the extra effect of armor for minions is okay, not a big deal for me as I'm not running a lot of minions, but I want to run endurance as one of my damage resistance types as I haven't messed with it much, and obviously armor never hurts. And then I'm also taking the druidic prowess, which is just strength and attunement stacking, which is fantastic. I use both of those. My earthquake and upheaval skill both scale from attunement and strength, so I get an 8% increased damage bonus on each of those per point spent here, as each point in this gives you 1 of each stat. Fantastic, I can't argue with that. I'm going to be filling that one up. And then the couple nodes I will probably be trying to get is putting the required 1 point in here to the cold damage, and then getting the river spirits for the cold damage and freeze rate, possibly more into the base one here for the just increased cold, but I really only benefit from the cold damage. The increased healing is okay, but not particularly important as I don't really need healing effectiveness. So I'll be taking the point there, probably putting several into the river spirits, and then I'll also be probably putting some points into the wind in the leaves, increased attack speed. I don't necessarily need it, but more attack speed just always feels smoother in a build. So if I have the points to spare, I will be putting some in here. And then finally, depending on how the build's going, later on, probably when I'm like level 70-ish, something in there, I might put some points into the just raw increased crit chance. We'll see though, I might ignore that because it is a very small amount at a time, and I might just use my points elsewhere, and if I choose to go crit, I might just work that into gear and ignore it in the passive tree. And then just to wrap up, my main goals at the moment are to keep pushing some monoliths, roll back, collect the last passive and idle slots, and stat-wise, I'm mostly just trying to push damage and try to find a way to squeeze some more mana regen into the build, because as you can see, the upheaval skill costs 20 mana right now, which I can sustain for a little bit if I'm just using that. But if I'm trying to, use my shout, use the slam, and then use upheaval, I do run into mana issues, especially when fighting a mob or a boss that I don't immediately one-shot. So I'd say my number 1 and number 2 stats I'm looking to add in right now, outside of just basic damage, is mana regen, and then my endurance threshold, as I'm still only sitting at like 171. I need to find some ways to work more of that in as I really want to use it. But yeah, that's how my build is going so far. I'm having a lot of fun now that the servers are actually back online, so it's been great. I'm gonna basically go back to keep playing as soon as I'm done editing and getting this video out there. Let me know how you guys are doing so far this cycle. Let me know if you're enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the 1.0 release outside of the server difficulties, and I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day. Until next time. Bye.